Hey guys, this is a review of the wireless Nest controller from RetroUSB. This thing was designed from scratch by the same person who did the AVS, the NES Famicom 720p HDMI box, which I absolutely love and I'm a big fan of. And it's created pretty much for the real hardcore NES enthusiast. So it's not cheap at $65, but the wireless protocol it uses isn't Bluetooth. It's designed specifically for the lowest latency possible. So while it might not be at the almost zero latency of wired, it's very close and much closer than Bluetooth is. Also, it's got built-in turbo buttons and a battery that should last about 100 hours. So I'm really interested to see how this thing works, how it feels because of that strange boomerang shape, and if there really is, if the lag really is as low as people say. I'll try to do some actual lag testing, but to be honest, I could usually tell pretty quickly with the 8-bit DO controllers on a NES and a SNES too, I guess. I could always tell that there's a slight bit of latency sometimes because Bluetooth has variable latency. But with this, we'll see. So let's unbox this thing and check it out. Okay, so let's check this thing out. Pretty cool box. Not too much extra packaging, which is always something that annoys me. Packaged nicely. Okay, fits right in. Oh good, no useless stuff in it, just everything that you need. It just has the controller itself, the connection dongle, and a USB port, which I'm assuming is for charging. This thing looks pretty cool. Definitely well made. It doesn't feel like a cheap piece of plastic. So let's see how this thing works. Okay, so let's start by connecting this to my Famicom. You just have to make sure that the switches match up, and this is so that you could use multiple controllers at the same time on the same console. So I have them both all set. I think there's 1, 2, 3. So there's 4 total settings, which makes sense because 4 maximum inputs. So let's just connect it all up. Turn it on. And it works. So obviously if you switch to a different channel, it's not going to sync up, but as soon as you go back, it immediately connects. So let's try good old Super Mario Brothers, because I think that's something that all of us have probably done, played a million times as kids. So the buttons are definitely very clicky. It reminds me more of like a Neo Geo controller than a NES controller. I'm not really sure if it's a good thing, bad thing, or if it even matters at all. But I think it would be something that I'd have to get used to. And while I like the controller, I think my hands are just kind of used to the original shape of the NES controller. You know, this having its this weird boomerang design. I'm not sure how much I like it. I wonder if I'll even be able to get used to it. Also, it feels like I need to put a little more pressure than I'm used to on the right D-pad in order to get it to move. And that's probably because I'm used to the rubber pad, which, you don't really need to make any... There's no button to be pushed, it's that electrical connection, whereas I believe these have physical buttons inside. So let's try a different game here. Good old Tetris. Yeah, I don't know why. I'm having a hard time getting it to push the right D-pad sometimes. See? So you hear that clicking? I definitely have to make a more solid connection than I would on an original controller. Oh, pushed the wrong buttons. Sorry. Yeah, my hand just is not liking that the clicky right arrow. Let's try this again, but with the original NES controller, and see if there's an immediate difference, or if maybe I'm just going crazy. Yeah, so there's an immediate difference right now. And I don't know that I would say that there's anything wrong with this controller, but I am definitely just used to having a squishy D-pad and not a clicky one. Because I mean, there's an immediate feeling like I just have to very easily rest my hands up against the side. And I guess let me go back to that select screen so I could show you guys the same thing that I was doing with the AVS controller. Alright, so left. Yeah. See, every time I hit right, it's happening. Okay, so I'm going to take this thing home with me. I'm going to try it out at my house and see if I can get used to the boomerang shape and the right D-pad. The other reason I want to make sure to try it out in my apartment versus here is because of the wireless signals itself. So many people talk about wireless range, but what they don't understand is the interference is the problem, not so much the range. And, I'm in the back of a gigantic open warehouse here, so there really isn't any wireless interference. I could probably go to the other side of the warehouse and it'll play fine. The real test, the very important thing, is I live in Manhattan, in the middle of a crowded city block in an apartment. So the fact that my apartment's tiny doesn't matter because it has all of those other wireless signals surrounding it. So everybody who has every cell phone, every router, any other kind of Bluetooth devices, everything is a wireless frequency that kind of just gets in and interferes with itself. And anybody that's ever tried to, download files or really even do any kind of LAN gaming wirelessly has probably run into this before. So here's going to be, next up, I guess I'll test how the wireless interference around your average building in Manhattan will affect the controller, if at all. Alright, so now I'm going to try to do a test to see how far away I could walk with this controller. So I have my iPhone up on a stand behind me, and then I have this one I'm going to carry with me, and even though I live in a tiny ass apartment, I'm going to go outside and down the hallway, because walking through all that interference will probably be a big help to see if this thing can actually go super far. Alright, so I'm going to start out by getting Super Mario Brothers ready. And now I'm just going to, I guess, sync up both of them. So I'll do a wave. Now I can get both of these cameras synced. And as you can see, so let me go down the hallway and out the door. Okay, so it made it all the way across the apartment and a few steps outside, which is really great for such a crowded area, but then it lost signal just a few feet down the hallway. So that's cool, still performs really well in my opinion, but now let's go back inside and see how it works playing on a flat screen TV. So basically, as long as I'm pushing hard on the right D-pad, everything seems to be okay. It's not like it's not responding, I just actually have to press down hard enough to make the connection. So there's certainly nothing really wrong with the button or the controller, it's just the responsiveness. Let's go right to Tetris and see about that. There's still definitely a little weird feeling when trying to move to the right. And I'm way out of practice in this game, but I'm definitely feeling wherever I don't press down hard enough, it's just not moving over. And I'm just used to resting my thumb in each direction to get these speed moves. Alright, so now I'll do it again with Hyperkin's controller, which when I first tested it, I had issues with the right D-pad as well, but Chris actually sent me 2 more of them, and they've been perfect, and the controller cord is really long, so I don't even have the need for wireless, but once again, I do have a tiny-ass little apartment here, so let's give it a try with this. Yeah, the whole thing just feels so much smoother. Obviously, I'm just trying to stack things up and go for Tetrises here, but I mean, just moving the pieces left and right. I mean, there's no button pushing. I'm just kind of sliding my hand, exactly the way old school D-pads were. Yeah, so obviously, other than when I'm trying to look at the camera to make sure everything's in focus, I'm doing much better with this gamepad, and I guess that's really like that's the number one way to figure these things out, is if you do a lot better with one controller, then it's the better controller for you, right? Okay, now let's take a look at the inside and see what's going on with the guts of this thing. Okay, so it's a pretty simple design, which is always good, and there's no rubber pads, so that's why you get the clicky feeling, which is pretty interesting, actually. So these are just the direct buttons and then the battery in back. So let me open up a NES controller just to see how it compares. So this is actually pretty interesting. Even though on the outside it seems different, it's actually the same layout on the inside. So I'll show the differences first. Of course, this has the cable, and now this has the rubber pads, which everybody's so used to with all the NES controller stuff. I'll just dump that out. But if you take this, the board that's inside of this, everything lines up. So that's cool for a couple of different reasons. That means that this thing is basically the same, well, this design is the same as the original, just with the wings on the side. So it's the same, it would have to be the same width and just about the same thickness then. But I think because of this, you might actually be able to swap it out into an original NES controller, as long as you were willing to cut the plastic to fit the USB port. So, as you can imagine, I had to give this a try. I went out and ordered one of those cheap $7 NES controllers from Amazon. And it looks and feels exactly like the original. I'm assuming that the electronics inside it are absolute garbage, which is fine because I'm going to be gutting this thing and just using it for the plastic. But let's see if we could actually fit the AVS, the RetroUSB controller guts inside of this one. And once again, this is an aftermarket $7 one. I am not about to hack up an official OEM controller. Okay, so as you've probably seen, I've been hacking the shit out of this thing. And because it's just a cheap aftermarket controller, I don't really care, that's totally fine. But what I did want to do is I wanted to see if the back of it was the same as a real official NES controller. Now, obviously I am not going to be hacking up a NES controller, but just out of curiosity, So yeah, all of these standoffs and all of these things that are getting in the way are in the original NES controller. So I really don't care about this piece of junk one, so I'm going to keep hacking it up just to see if it could be done. But this definitely proves that you don't want to use an original NES controller because it's not going to drop right into place. You would actually have to hack it up. Okay, so after absolutely hacking this thing to death, I think I got somewhere. So if you want to keep the front of the controller the same, all you would have to do is not have the turbo buttons, and there should have been a little hole here cut for the LED, but I just kind of bent the LED over a little bit. But other than that, there's really nothing too much you have to do to the front, just a few snips here and there. But the back, you have to completely and totally gut. So almost all of these standoffs would have to be cut down. And also, please keep in mind that this was just an experiment. I had no intentions that this would actually work. So please don't think I'm trying to say this is what you should do. This was just an experiment to cut it all out to see what would fit. But anyway, you have to cut a lot of the standoffs. You have to cut the holes for the USB and for the switch. But on top of that, even when you put it in, the edge of the metal here is still flush with the plastic. So you'd actually need to route the plastic out more. And you would need to do something about this antenna. Now I think you might be able to desolder it and try to put it flush. See how high up it's sticking. But just because I don't want to hurt the actual controller. I don't care anything about this $6 thing. So I was able to put it over, and everything kind of sort of snaps into place. It really is just these two that are starting to put pressure on the back cover. But this antenna itself, the pins go up past the plastic. I cut the hole for the whole thing. I probably could actually just cut those pins and then around here. And I, put some black tape over it or something. But I just did it just to see if it would work. But you're definitely going to have to leave the battery on the outside, which isn't too bad because you could run it through the controller hole and maybe stick it there. So the answer to the question of can you use this in an original NES controller? I mean, if you have a whole lot of patience and you don't care about hacking apart an aftermarket controller, I'm definitely going to put some non-conductive tape over this. One screw standoff is still there, so I could bolt that side down. But the rest of them, I'm going to have to either get really long screws and washers or find some creative solution for the inside. So, I guess you kind of could. You could be a total idiot and just, epoxy glue it all shut, but then you're never going to get it apart. So, just for the principle of it, I guess let's try this thing out and see how it works in the NES shell. Alright, so let's just go back and revisit the whole thing again with the wireless controller set up this way. My hands immediately love it. Much, much more than the boomerang style. I don't even really notice that this is here. It would be nicer if this hole wasn't here. If I'd known better, I probably would have just cut the hole around the pins in that component. But this is just, feels great. The D-pad is still, I don't know. I don't know if the reason the D-pad feels better is because my brain is playing tricks on me thinking it's the original, or if it's because this is where I anchor my hand so that it's easier for me to push on the right arrow itself. It is kind of fun having a wireless version of the original NES controller. So let's do Tetris. Alright, do the same thing as a... Well, that's weird. Hold on, let me get it back. So, in this shell, the right D-pad thing is working perfect. It's very strange. I don't know, maybe the actual D plastic wasn't set right in the other one, but let's give it a try. Oh yeah, this controller without a doubt feels better. I mean, there's no... And now obviously this is a matter of preference. Anybody that's not used to the NES controller or is, obsessive about these things as I am might not care at all. But this is exactly what my hand is expecting to feel, and the D-pad seems to be working perfect. I mean, I joked before of, like, who would want one of these things with only one screw in it and then glued down? I mean, I'm really tempted. I'm really tempted to, like, find a creative way to get this thing either glued or bolted in, cover up this component, of course, and use it like this. I mean, that's really tempting. So, interesting. Okay, so I just had to go through this one more time, even though we already just saw it, because I put it back together and I wanted to see if I'm really going to do as bad at Tetris as I was doing now that it's back in the other case. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling a difference, and I made sure to put the D-pad in the exact same way that it was in the aftermarket NES controller that I just hacked into. So it's not like it was directional and only supposed to be keyed in one way and I was screwing that up. And if it was, I got it right this time. But I'm definitely feeling a small difference. So it's probably just that I'm used to that shape so much that everything else is just weird to me. But let's just go back and test that arrow thing one more time. Yeah, it's not doing it anymore, which is really strange. Maybe you saw it in the other video. It was definitely messing up. Maybe the temperature in this room, the expanding and contracting of the heat messed with it or something. I don't know. I didn't think plastic was that susceptible. Weird. I did a slow motion test here to see if you could see any delay between the two controllers, but it's just shot on my iPhone at 240 frames a second, and of course you have to deal with the refreshing of the CRT, which is why it looks so terrible in the background. But to be honest, I guess the right way to do this would have been to use a NES Advantage with an LED that lights up as soon as you press the button, and then solder in an LED to the RetroUSB controller, but I really didn't want to modify that thing at all, so I just kind of did it with the push of a button using my thumbs to gauge the timing. And to be honest, at 240 frames a second, even if I'm off by a hair, this thing's spot on. I mean, there was no perceptible lag whatsoever. And as you could see for yourself, if there is any lag, it's just not even something that would register on a CRT, I guess. But, I guess that completely matches the data that RetroUSB had posted about it. So there's no lag that you're going to notice in any kind of gaming environment. But maybe one day I'll go back and perfect these LED slow motion tests. So my conclusion on this is it's totally up to you and your preferences. First and foremost, is this boomerang shape going to be something that your hands like? Mine don't. Mine don't like having the palms resting on the bottoms like that. I like having something flat. So that's number one for me. Number two is the clicky buttons. That's loud. If you can get used to the noise and the feel of the clicky tactile button push versus the soft squishy of the rubber one, if both of those are okay with you, then I'd say definitely go for it. If not, then I don't know, this probably isn't the controller for you. One thing that really threw me for a loop, though, was buying this $7 controller and cutting it to pieces. I honestly, not once did I think this would work or even be something worth doing, which is why I just hacked it to bits and didn't actually stop to try to do a good job. Once I realized that everything would fit in there and that not only did my hands really prefer that controller better, but the positioning of my hands made the D-pad press that much smoother, even with the clicky buttons, I was kind of blown away. I almost wish I didn't just hack it apart and took my time doing it. So I guess the final conclusion is it's all about if you like the buttons and the feel, or if you'd be willing to go through all the trouble of buying one of these for, cheap, but then spending the time to make the correct cuts and do it right. I personally, if I knew that it was going to be like this, I would use a Dremel and then files to make everything perfect. I would desolder that board and see what I could do. Maybe put some non-conductive tape on it and, drop it flush down. Maybe I'd try to find a creative solution for the battery, but that didn't even really bother me in the back. So this one's a tough one. I'm a huge fan of Brian and his products. I love the AVS. This one's good. As is, it's not for me, but maybe I'll revisit this in a while and I'll hack up another one of these and do a really good job and see how it feels after that. I kind of wanted to get this review out sooner rather than later, so I figured I'd publish it as is, but who knows, maybe a couple months will go by and I'll say this is my favorite controller after being mounted into one of these shells. Definitely will never be as the Bomerang though. So either way, if you're interested, definitely check out the link in the description directly to the product. And as always, I have to thank the Patreons because there's no way I'd be able to make these videos without you guys. So thank you so much. Any comments or criticism, post below, and I'll see you guys next time.